feet hurting. World full of busy bees working. I ain't never met a free person. I don't get along with these earthlings. I'm trying to seek purpose, fight for something I believe's worth it. For the curse, I'ma reverse it. I don't dream cause I sleep nervous. Yet I keep flirting, face death like a Steve Irwin. Whole heat, I'ma drink thermos. Tell the bartender keep serving. I'm trying to be perfect, using dirty shit to clean dirt with. Only happy when the weed burning. Traded oxygen to breathe herping. Till I see curtains, lungs failing, they cease working. Air is something that I need urgent. Suffocating, trying to squeeze words in. What would I do with my last breath? Would I yell? Would I cry? Would I laugh? Cause I'm glad that I'm past that mess. Till I pass, never felt that blessed. Even bad breath when you living is better than good breath. When you lack flesh, got a glass chest that I cracked and my lost breath hasn't made it back yet. I'm on my last breath, walking the last step. I'm on the last test, final answer and my last guess. Wonder what I gotta pass next. I'm on my last quest, so much harder than my last track. Mad blessed, hope I can outlast death. Grim Reaper got my address, down on my last cent. Cash spent from a check I don't even have yet from my last rent. Sweater shit has got me mad stressed. I inherited my dad's debt, never got to hear his last breath. And the only reason I ain't passed yet, I'm the first ever and the last left.
I let the record show, I let the tech explode. Put on the weapon show, pull up the Texaco, Narcos in Mexico, call up the technical, they know the text a blow. Shot to Plexico. Turn you to vegetable, body electrical, acid and alkaline, body so flexible. The shooter's feast like a Uber Eats, got a group of these suited these scooter bees, for letting the Uzi Aruga speak. An American got up in Cuba eats, the powers they seek and powers the weak, they follow and creeps. Powers that be inherit the world from cowards and sheep. Been to the mountains, top towers and peaks, flowers and sweets and showered our feet. The lightning and thunder, the shower to sleep, shower the D's. This not a verse, this our receipts.
What would I do with my last breath? Would I yell? Would I cry? Would I laugh? Cause I'm glad that I'm past that mess. Till I pass, never felt that blessed. Even bad breath when you living is better than good breath. When you lack flesh, got a glass chest that I cracked and my lost breath hasn't made it back yet. I'm on my last breath, walking the last step. I'm on the last test, final answer and my last guess. Wonder what I gotta pass next. I'm on my last quest, so much harder than my last track. Mad blessed, hope I can outlast death. Grim Reaper got my address, down on my last cent. Cash spent from a check I don't even have yet from my last rent. Sweater shit has got me mad stressed. I inherited my dad's debt, never got to hear his last breath. And the only reason I ain't passed yet, I'm the first ever and the last left.
It's like a track finish, I attract women, they the bad women. I'ma splash in them, leave a bag with them. Then I raise seas to be mad different. If I die now, I'm coming back in them. Cause they dad missing, but they cash dripping. Cause they royalty, so they brag different. Ain't no ass kissing, never had feelings. Seen a white victim and a black witness. Mac ripping on my last mission. Yak sipping, blowing blackism. Gat missing, he was lack slipping. Smack hit him, now we act different. Apparition, the bad vision. The Mac a chip him and crash the system. Uncle Tom, cause you that willing. Fuck the law, I'm going back to living. Astral prisms of black religions. Activisms of conversations. Sacrilegious, the palms of Satan. Black magicians, Babylon erasing. Raise our hands to the God we praising. Hustling, the marathon we racing. Nipsey at the finish line, he waiting.
What would I do with my last breath? Would I yell? Would I cry? Would I laugh? Cause I'm glad that I'm past that mess. Till I pass, never felt that blessed. Even bad breath when you live
There you have it. Yeah. You already know what it is. That's Last Breath featuring Cambada, Red Pill, Blue Pill on that Holy Ghost 2. Holy Ghost 2. Make sure y'all go and stream that on the streaming services. You dig? Yeah, that's what it is. Alright? I can't wait for that video to be made. You know I'm gonna have to play El Chapo's son in the first scene. Knuckles in Mexico. Call up the technical. I'm gonna have to reenact Chapo's son, my nigga. You know what I'm talking about? Dark matter matters. Black matter matters. Yeah, let's do this roll call and get right into the show. You know what I mean? This is an early show. This is a gift to the family. You know what I mean? I want y'all to be able to watch this at the dinner table or after y'all eat your dinner. So I'm putting in this work early on this Th3rd Thursday. Yeah, let's do this roll call. Baltimore, Texas in the house, Tucson in the house. right? Louisville, Des Moines in the house, Indianapolis, Nigeria's in the building, 305, Chicago, Columbus, LA. We got a full table tonight. Talk black to me. October's here. Jackson, Mississippi, Pittsburgh, California, the Shooters Feast, Day, Jersey, STL, St. Louis, 817, VA's in the building, California, West Los Angeles, Denver, Mile House City, London, South London. What's good with y'all? I heard about those riots at the movie theater. I want to see that movie that they showing. Yeah, peace to Nola, Nairobi, Kenya. All right, Minnesota's in the building. Raleigh, North Carolina, of course. The Carolinas is in the building. Milwaukee's in the building. KC is in the building. The NOLA is in the building. Detroit is in the building. Philly's in the building. Flint, Michi's in the building. All right, Minneapolis is in the building. Yeah, what's up, Michigan? Yeah, we definitely all here. Houston, Texas is in the building. Toronto, Compton, Flatbush, Massive, where there. All right, Washington by way of New York, Chicago, Phoenix, Arizona, Hawaii. Brixie is in the building. Brixton, London, Goldsboro, North Carolina, Washington State, Bronx is in the building. Leeds is in the building. What's happening? All right. Philly's in the building. Yeah. Checking in from all 50 states. The truckers is in the building. Hit the horns. Nairobi's in the building. Philly's in the building. Illinois is in the building. All right. Yes. Detroit is in the building. The whole family is here. We all at the dinner table today. New Haven, Columbus, Ohio. So this is going to be a very interesting conversation. I'm glad that people from all over is in the building so we could all have these conversations so we could be at the dinner table collectively getting some real good information out. Do I have a symbol of the chaos hoodie for sale? Yes, I do. All right, hit me on that Cash App. New London is in the building. Lancaster's in the building. I'm gonna show you a image of it before the show is over. All right, I'm gonna grab a piece. I got one of them here. Goldsboro. All right, there's a movie. There was a riot in the Brixton area in London. The name of the movie is Blue. Is Blue something? Let me know, people from the UK. What's the name of the movie? It's Blue something. And there was a machete fight in the movie theater, and they shut down the movie, and all of the UK theaters trying to blame the movie for the violence. Blue Story. Blue Story, the young bloke from Top God or Top, what is it? I call myself a Top God from is it Top Dogs? What is it? Top Guy, Top Boy? Yeah, that shit, that a show on Netflix. Yeah, Top Boy. You know what I mean? I can't wait to that series grows up and they become top gods, because that's the vibration we moving with. But yeah, the young guy from Top Boy, he's in the movie. Um, I like his acting in it. Yeah, I like his acting. The young bloke, you know, he's a good bloke. He's a good actor, you know. Man from Acne, yeah, in it. So it was, yeah, I know it wasn't a riot like that, but propaganda, of course, the way that they were trying to propagandize it, that's what it came across the news. When I looked into it, it was basically, the youth that are out there in the UK, right, that are moving with, you know, a dark energy, you know, they're tapping into that dark matter, they're tapping into that black matter, they're tapping into the dark side, and they're banging, they're going in, and they're drilling, right? They took the drill culture from Chicago, right? Another place, Illinois, Chirac, uh, a gangland, right? A gangland that basically in the 30s and in the 40s and whatnot, this was the rise of organized crime. So crime and that energy, that dark energy, that dark matter, that real underworld energy has always existed there. On the melanated side, it has evolved into what we know as the drilling culture. And the drilling culture is a killing culture. And that killing culture is being exported through drill music. And the drill music has now influenced a whole country, the United Kingdom. And the youth in the United Kingdom are moving as crews and whatnot, and they're out there drilling. And what that means is they're having these knife fights and these machete wars. They don't drill with the guns per se like they do in Chicago, Chirac, and in other places in America. I guess because of the availability of the guns. I don't know all of the politics that has not, that makes it a knife thing. But in the UK, their mode of assault and murder and conflict resolution is usually by the knife. You know, my father always taught me that you charge a gun and you run from a knife. In some situations, getting poked up, uh, that I, you don't want to go through that. Gun laws are extremely strict. That's what someone in the chat room said in regards to the weapons, the accessibility to the weapons. There was a report that just came out about mass shooters, one of the most in depth reports that has been done up to this day. And they came up with four variables amongst all of the mass murderers that they profiled from 1966, starting with the Kent University shooting and whatnot in Texas. I believe it was Kent. And one of the variables is access to firearms, right? That's one of the variables. There were four different variables. One of the variables is that there was a well planned script, meaning that the killers, the mass shooters, had a script to basically all a manifesto. A script is a manifesto. A script is a comic book. A script is a movie that people follow, and because of that script, they justify what it is. A script is Rambo. A script is the white cowboy John Wayne in them. The script is Manifest Destiny. The script is Might is Right. The script is the Holy Quran with the Ku Klux Klan. That's their script. That's the shit that they go. And now it's turned into the chat rooms of 4chan. Now it's turned into the chat rooms of 8chan. Now it's turned into all of these online movements and whatnot. The script is Columbine. The fact that the Columbine shooting was one of the first high school mass shootings that was basically publicized around the world as something that it was turned into a spectacle. So people began to do copycat murders and whatnot. So that mass murder right there is seen as a turning point in mass shootings and things of that nature. You know, so today's episode, we're gonna explore the underworld. We're gonna explore the dark side a little bit. I put a post up on my YouTube channel where I did a little bit of uh what do they call that? I did a survey. I did a survey where I asked the family. I did a post and it was a survey. I said, "What topic do the family want to get in? Do y'all want us to get into on Know the Ledge University?" And the topic that got the most response was the dark occultism, or the dark, occult sciences, dark magic, and metaphysics. So I'm like, okay, the people want to talk about some dark shit, right? So what better day do we talk about the darkness, or what better day do we tap into some dark shit but on Thanksgiving? You understand? They talk about Black Friday. Well, goddamn it, what about Black Thursday? You understand? And we're not going to get super esoteric. We're going to go more and speak the language that everybody understands. And we're going to talk about the underworld. All right? We're going to talk about the darkness or the black matter that matters, the underworld. because I've been dumpster diving over the past few days. I don't know if it's a result of this new moon. I don't know if it's a result of being in Scorpio and the remnants of that retro, but I've been in a real dark place. It's not a bad thing, you know what I mean? It's just being in alignment with the motherfucking season and whatnot. And I've been on my Netflix binging and whatnot. Been watching a lot of gangster shit. You know what I'm talking about? I've been watching Vlad TV. A lot of people talking about murder. A lot of people talking about dark shit. I'm intrigued with these. There's a new breed of gangsters who are following the footsteps of a Henry Hill. These niggas are narrating all of their criminal deeds and all of their darkness. There would be no Netflix if these niggas wasn't sitting around telling all of their motherfucking tea. So you got people who come home, who are coming home, even people who are snitches, because a majority of these documentaries are snitches. Keep that in mind. The people who are entertaining us about an unknown world, because you want to talk occult. Well, there's nothing more occult than the underworld. There's nothing more occult than the trenches. There's nothing more occult than the quote unquote organized crime, the mafioso, the mafia, right? Where things are hidden. This is a secret society. All we ask is trust. You damn right I watched The Irishman on Netflix. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Godfather of Harlem. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to speak about why is there a theme that I'm finding, because I'm being taught to study patterns. So as we celebrate today, right? As we celebrate, as we collectively come together and celebrate, right? Whether we agree to it or not, when the world comes together today on this on Black Thursday to celebrate some of the most organized criminals on the borders of North America who formed a criminal organization, right? In places like Tammany Hall, okay? Where they came into America, right? And they came with the intent of doing very dark, sinister things, right? They came here first and foremost in 1492 on a murder mission, right? With paperwork from the Vatican and paperwork from the popes and paperwork from the crowns of Europe, of Sicily and Portugal, Queen Isabella, King Ferdinand. And it gave them the right to pillage, and it gave them the right to take, and it gave them the right to steal, and it gave them the right to extort, and it gave them the right to racketeer, and it gave them the right to traffic. The same things that these people have done in the 14, 15, and 1600s is the same thing that they've been doing up until this day. And I'm speaking about these organized crime families like the Italians, like the Irish, like all of these mafioso figures, these underworld figures who, if you really want to keep it a buck, are the fabric of what you know as America. There is no America without this motherfucking underworld, without this very bloody, deadly, dangerous, dark matter, right? Without this very dangerous underpinning of sex, money, murder, right? And action, right? Continuously making the wheel turn, continuously evolving other people through the act of violence, through the act of force, because force is one of the quote unquote variables in making shit happen in this reality. You understand? So you tell me, what great civilization can you identify? And don't take me too far back. You know what I'm talking about? I gotta go eat dinner. You know what I mean? Show me what civilization is standing that's not standing upon bones, that's not standing upon corpses, that's not standing upon blood. So here it is. We're celebrating some organized criminals. These are criminals. Keep that in mind. If you've been taught to, you know, romanticize the Italian, but the Italian is the Roman. You understand? But prior to the Italian coming here to get busy and do his 1, 2, 3, he learned the game. He understood when he got here that this shit, what this shit was. He understood. He understood. The Jewish gangster understood. The Irish mobster understood. They understood once they got here what this shit is and how this shit operates. And they show you when you, I mean, when you really sit back and look at what the fuck has happened to form this society that we exist in, where they're telling us that you, black man, and you, black woman, are the criminals of the fucking planet. You are the scum of the earth. You are the degenerates. You are the undesirables. You are the criminal. You're the criminal element. That everything that's wrong revolves around either something that you did or something that you didn't do. But when you sit back and you really let these people tell their stories, you're like, well, god damn it, every single ethnic group was intermarried. They were interwoven. They were juxtaposed. There was no line between political parties, labor unions, and their underworld, the mafias. Because remember, the mafia advanced the ethnic groups, their mobs. Everybody has a mafia. You go to China, there's a mafia. You go to Nigeria, there's a mafia. You go to Japan, there's a mafia. You go to Ireland, you go to Italy, you go to Russia. It doesn't matter. There's an underworld everywhere functioning, and in this underworld, this is where racketeering, this is where all kind of order and all kind of other things and all kind of advancements. Loan sharks. Do you know the importance? Do you know what the fuck a loan shark did for their people? Do you know what the fuck loan sharks were doing for their people? Think about it. You have to be able to clean money. You're getting millions of dollars in whatever activities that you have your hands in. Let's think, just for instance, the Italian mafia. Let's use the Italian mafia as an example. So the Italian mafia, they got their hands in extortion. They got their hands in prostitution. They got their hands in racketeering. They got their hands in gambling. They had their hands in numbers. They had their hands in drugs eventually. So when all of that money is coming in, you're in your neighborhood, because remember, you are, right, in a place like America. When you come into America, you're quickly shown. I don't care. We're talking about these European immigrants. You quickly realize that this shit is about white versus black. Okay. And then not only do you realize that this thing is about white versus black, this thing is about top versus bottom. This thing is about, it's a caste system, and there's a hierarchy, and motherfucking white is right. So automatically, you either subliminally or you're told face to your face that you cannot affiliate or associate yourself whatsoever with those niggas. If you want the privilege of what white has to offer, if you want the privilege of what this society that we have created, where it's put together as a system, some people may call it a criminal system. Some people may call it a democracy or a machine and whatnot. But whatever the case is, you motherfuckers have to pay in blood, and you have to pay in time, and you have to pay in money in order to sit at the table with us. So these immigrant groups who are not considered white at first, keep that in mind. White as what you know it today did not exist like that in the times that I'm speaking of, in the 1800s and things like that. Do your research about all of these mobsters. Do your research about people like a Ralph Lauren. Do your research about the people who created what you know now today as Hollywood. These people are now multi-billionaires. They are all They not ADOS, right? They not ADOS, right? They are first, they're anchor babies, right? They came in first wave, second wave. They came in first generation, second generation immigrants that had nothing allegedly, right? They were all on equal levels with who they considered to be the niggas at the bottom of the caste system, the untouchables, the quote unquote, the motherfucking nagas or the niggas as they call you in America, right? The blacks, right? Not when they say the blacks, they're not referring to the black people. They're referring to your position on a totem pole or your position in the caste system. That's what the blacks means. The same way the whites is identifying an Aryan of a higher order. What was every immigrant class's appeal? What did they? What was their ultimate goals for? What was their visions of success? What ladder did they all want to climb? They wanted to climb the ladder to be up there with the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the WASP. Okay, that was the symbol of success. That was the top of the motherfucking. That was the penthouse suite. All right, in the pyramid of whiteness, the blue blood, the blue blood. Okay, and that was the white man. And these immigrant classes were not considered white people or white men. Blonde hair, blue eyed, you know, the people from the blokes, I'm talking about, you know, the aristocracy, I'm talking about, drinking with their pinkies up. Those people, they was not allowing no fucking Italians or no Irish people who were called the niggas in Europe. And why were they called the niggas in Europe? Because they had black blood. They had nigga blood. All right? Similar to any group of amalgamated white folk in any one of the towns that the hundreds of y'all that are on this live right now live in. So you live in towns where white women have been getting, have been in relationships with black men for more than 3 generations. So you see how the children are becoming amalgamated. You see the browning of your areas and whatnot. Well, that's been going on. That's a cycle. It didn't just start right now. It's been going on like that for many, many different life cycles and whatnot. You know, so when the Irish and the Italians and them came here, they were just coming out of a cycle where their population was basically amalgamated. They had Moorish blood, all right? They had black blood, African blood, because as you can see from anybody who looks at a map, the Straits of Gibraltar or the Iberian Peninsula is, Spain and Africa. It's not really far from each other. It's not far from each other. So Africans have been going into Italy since time immemorial, going all the way back into Hannibal's days, right? And they've been pulling up on Becky's. I'm talking about forever. You know, that's a constant. That's a constant. You know what I'm saying? It's always been a Becky hunt. You know, not looking for them, but goddamn it, will we pull up? Niggas pull up. It's been going down like that in Ireland, Scotland, with the Gauls. You know what I mean? All throughout Europe. Let's just get off of this. I'm not. Let's stop the fake outrage at this point. You know, people are approaching things from a position of how they feel these days, and from a victim place. Oh, but men have been men as long as men have been men. So these mulattoes had to whiten themselves up, and they began to whiten themselves up, especially in the Sicilian circles, by breeding, a lot of that nigga blood out of them. But they were not out there mixing with different tribes and whatnot. They kept it tribal. So what you're reminded of when you come into places like New York City or America for that matter, as an immigrant class, is that you're reminded of tribalism to a degree. So you start putting on for your nationality because it's you against everybody. So you start putting on for your people. So the Jews start putting on for the Jews. The Italians, they start putting on for the Italians. You understand? And by doing that, out of that forms these gangs. And these gangs become protectors. These gangs become insurers. These gangs either become terrorizers or they become the protectors of not only the businesses in the neighborhood, but the neighborhood to a degree at whole, right? So there's a nationality pride in having a mafia, right? Or a gang or a crew, this compromise of people of your own nationality who are forming and coming together as a society, whether secret or known, right? Whether clandestine, you know what I'm saying? Or these people are revealing themselves. But when these people are saying, yo, we're here to protect our neighborhood and we're here to feed the people and we're here to provide opportunities, and we want our people to thrive because gangs evolve into organized crime and then organized crime evolves into, you know, politics, and then politics trickles down and evolves into all kind of other kind of power, and then labor unions, right? They play a big part in that too. And the Irishman, they really painted the picture of the importance of Jimmy Hoffa and the labor unions and the pension funds and what that really was about, you know. And it really gets to show you where we're not, we're black people, what the fact that what we're not doing or what we haven't done or what we did not succeed doing for that matter. We really got to be honest with ourselves. These people, they went and leveled up, and they leveled up on our backs. There's an argument and there's a conversation about what immigrants have done to the fabric of the ADOS and the FBA in this land. Well, I would say, well, God damn it, shit. You watching Godfather Harlem? Are you paying attention to the role that the Italians played in the plague known as heroin? Are you familiar with that? Are you paying attention to the role that they played in taking over the policy bankers, the numbers game? Did you see what they did to your people? Did you see the executions of some of your most gangsters by the hands of the Italians, tying up people like Bumpy Johnson in wars, running down on Queenie and all of them? Do you see them? Nobody's mad at that. When they brought the drugs in the hood, when they brought the goddamn heroin, when they brought the coke, when they put the guns in, nobody is saying, oh, and then they acting like use guys need to work harder. Did you see the unionization of the unions where they took the motherfucking niggas? They man, going to a construction site and take a honest assessment of where black people are in the construction business. And I'm talking about, these are neighborhoods that were considered gentrified now. They're putting towers and they're putting castles, ivory castles in your neighborhoods, and you're not selling the concrete to them. You're not the one that's selling them the bricks. You're not the ones who sold them the windows. You didn't sell them the doors. You're not selling the screws, my nigga. Only thing that you doing is swinging a fucking hammer. You understand? So the whole union thing, labor, my people, labor. The thing that black people were thriving in the 30s and the 40s and whatnot. We had labor forces. We were in manufacturing and producing, right? We were producing. We were making things with our hands. We were being engineers. People were going to school and they were learning trades. You feel me? That is not what is going on in these modern days. Not to say that it should be going on, because change is a constant. So we have to assess and be like, oh, well, we leveled up. Where we at now, y'all? Oh, we doing the NBA. We doing the rapper shit real heavy. Niggas is doing barbershops real heavy. You know what I'm talking about? And we definitely are the illest drug dealers that have ever been given birth to. But really, when you really want to talk about all of this drug dealing and this underworld activity and all of these, you know, all of the different um, movements, like a BMF, you know, like the ever so the recycled story of Alpo and Rich Porter and AZ. The loop, that shit has been looped and it's been quote unquote you know, it's been carbon copied and Xeroxed by so many different black men, you know what I mean, around not just America, but the world. There's been all kind of facsimiles, because you got to remember the rappers, the MCs that we all fall in love with, the lyrics, the stories. 89% of those stories that the rappers are rapping about are about underworld, dark matter. They're talking about black matter matters. You know what I'm saying? They're speaking about real events, real people. These are real people who these rappers, when they go into their mind, into the fantasy world, to bring up resources, actual urban legends that we all have known about coming up. We all were familiar with the urban legends. We were all familiar with the killers. We were all familiar with the drillers. We were all familiar with the Willies. We were all familiar with Frank Lucas, Frank Matthews, Pee Wee Kirkland. Everybody was made aware of the gangsters, because the gangsters have the magnetic appeal. The underworld has the magnetic appeal. The underworld is the foundation. The underworld feeds the motherfucking lower self. It feeds the dark matter. It feeds the black matter. It feeds a part of us. It feeds our carnivorous selves. It feeds our murderous, the aspect of ourselves that's a primal self, the murder, the predator. You know what I mean? The motherfucking Serengeti, the you know, the just the killer, you know, the killer. So as much as we look for the angels and the Christ, you know, we looking for the light, we still attracted to the darkness. You understand? We still attracted to the darkness. That's the complete man. So we've been drawn to these dark figures. But this has been going on since Kemet. Niggas was drawn to Set. Remember, Set wasn't unpopular. Niggas was drawn to Zeus. You know what I'm talking about? People were drawn to Shango. You know. Yeah, the Dark Star. We love the villain. Because we are the villain. Nigga, we are the devil. Legba. Baron Samdi. Dark matter matters. Black matter matters. Remember, 90 somewhat percent of this whole shit is that. So what is about the people who tap into the dark side? What is it about the people who flirt with death? What is it about the people who walk that thin line, who manifest things and who basically are power driving through life and, accumulating millions of dollars, going around the world? These are legends that we talk about to this day. You know, there's a lot of people that you would consider to be square that was around. They don't talk about them in a legendary way that they talk about the urban legends, the street legends, the gangsters. They don't live in infamy. You understand? They're not infamous. You know? So, what is about these characters, that their names and their deeds, and what it is that they did to advance their families, and for some of them, their races, right? Because the Italian mafia is on record to be known to. It's been said that they advanced their race forward. They came in at the bottom into poverty. They were impoverished. They were third world in a sense. They were at the bottom, my nigga. You know what I'm talking about? And then they moved up to the working class. And once in the working class, they were able to solidify and consolidate themselves to be real estate owners. They consolidated themselves to be investors in small businesses and also entrepreneurs, and bloomed into serial entrepreneurship. So now they elevate themselves into the middle class. And then from elevating themselves into the middle class, they are now pushed into the upper class, or, the higher class of society. All of this is done with a quote unquote secret society or an invisible hand, or there's a force, there's an invisible force that is protecting them and killing for them in their name, and they're kidnapping, they're killing, they're maiming, they're assaulting, they're robbing, they're stealing, they're selling drugs, they're transporting and trafficking in the name of Italy, in the name of all Italians. And then they had the backing of their own people to push that whole shit. And they elevated their people into a place where they're good right now, where even with the removal of the mafia or the weakening of the mafia or the dissolving of the mafia, they're like, well, they served their purpose. We here now, nigga. You know what I'm saying? We're considered to be white. We've achieved white status. We got Christopher Columbus Day. Hollywood, in a sense, romanticized the image of the quote unquote bloodthirsty, bloodlusting, severely racist Italian mobster. Right? They cleaned up. They cleaned them up and basically romanticized them to, whereas the Jews in Hollywood who were, remember, they were cosplaying and they were code switching, playing Italians, right? The Fred Astaire's, the Cagney, late the what's the name? Cagney, what is it? I'm saying Cagney and Lacey. You know, they were molding their characters after mobsters. Remember, prior to James Cagney, prior to the formation of J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, right? Prior to the G-Men, the mobster or the outlaw, Billy the Kid, um, what's the bank robbers? All of the bank robbers, right? All of these bank robbers, Bonnie and Clyde, right? All of these robbers, they were considered to be Robin Hood. Remember, the wave of these robbing crews and whatnot was in the 30s. Jesse James, that's right. You know, they said in the documentary that I saw on Netflix about the Irish mob, and they were talking about the bank robbers, and they were speaking about, all of, they called them the outlaws. These are the outlaws. These were people who were breaking out of jails. Niggas was breaking out of Sing Sing and shit like that, right? Yeah, Boardwalk Empire. That's an excellent series. If you get the chance to watch that. But Red Hamilton. That's right. It was Red Hamilton, and you know, John Dillinger, right? So Dillinger was the focus. Dillinger was one of the first uh, gangster Hollywood, right? John Dillinger was one of the first gangster Hollywood gangsters. You know, talking about. So there was a whole wave. This is around the time of the Depression. There was an animosity towards the banks as a result of the Depression. You know what I'm talking about? You got to remember the Depression was hitting the Europeans harder than what it was hitting Africans or African Americans and things of that nature. So these people were out here, really struggling, really eating, really dumpster diving, and doing all of this stuff. So here you have people like Babyface Nelson, Dillinger, Red Hamilton, and all of them. They are basically going around in the Midwest and other places pulling out these daring bank robberies. Back in those days, 20 racks back in those days was a lot. 50,000 and stuff like that. So here it is. They're hitting newspapers, they're hitting the newsreels, Bonnie and Clyde and whatnot. All of this was romanticized. Yeah, the Dust Bowl. You know, these places already were built. These banks that they're robbing in these towns and things of that nature, some of them are already built on the bones, built on the corpses, built on the quote unquote cotton economy and other things like that, you know, built on. Yeah, those were our banks. Yeah, and they were definitely robbing melanated banks as well. You know what I'm saying? When you do more of the research and whatnot, they was banging on uh black owned banks as well. Yeah, Queen and Slim. Yeah, I'm gonna go and check that out. That looks interesting. You know, that looks interesting. So the era of the gangster, Al Capone in Chicago, gangster gangland, right? Atlantic City, you know what I'm saying? What they show you in Boardwalk with Chalky and all of them. You know what I mean? With was it what's his name? The white dude, was it Nuggy? What's his name? Nucky. Yeah, my nigga Nucky. You know what I'm saying? And you'll get to see you'll get to see the interwovenness of the underworlds and the pol- politicians and the crooked corruptedness in the police forces. Because keep in mind, like I said, this is Thanksgiving today. So I see all of the posts where people are talking about, oh, you know, this is a day where they celebrate killing our people. But let's get a little more deeper into it. And that's not to take away our arguments. Let's use these days as days to teach, right? Let's talk about the significance of, you know, the quote unquote Aboriginal indigenous Indians and how today is still being quote unquote, you know, exploited. You know, what they came to America and were introduced to, you know, through the Tammanies, okay? Through Chief Tammany, all right? Let's talk about the foundation of how they built their political system. You know what I'm talking about? Through Tammany Hall. Because we're studying the quote unquote mafia. We're studying the gangs of New York. We're studying the interconnectivity between the gangster culture, which was the immigrant culture, right? They call it the gangster culture, but it's the immigrant culture. It's the Irish, it's the Jew, and it's the Italian. Okay, and the black culture was the linchpin. It was the trampoline in which all of these people were jumping off of. All right, it's these organized crime syndicates headquartered in Chicago and in New York. New York being a place that the European or the Dutch and whatnot basically came and took from the Lenapes, right? The Lenape tribe. They came and deboed this shit from a tribe of Lenapes, one of the chief of the Lenape tribe being Chief Tammany, right? Let's read real quick about New York City, okay? Or Manhattan, or Manhattan on this very, you know, on this Thanksgiving Day. So the true native New Yorkers can never truly reclaim their homeland. Nearly 400 years, right? We in the 400-year jubilee. Facts? So I'm in New York right now. So this is a 400-year sale of Manhattan, right? They're talking about slavery on one hand, right? Some people were enslaved on one hand, but 400 years ago, there was a whole people, a whole tribe, a whole motherfucking nation that had land, and they was able to sell that shit. So they wasn't no slave. They wasn't basically being subdued. They wasn't, you know, uh, from somewhere else. They were on Turtle Island. They was in this bitch. It was up. They was up in here. This was sacred land, and they got basically deboed from the land. So let's read on it. When the Dutch arrived in the 17th century in what is now New York City, their encounters with the indigenous peoples known as the Lenape, at first mostly amicable according to historical records. They shared the land and traded guns, beads, and wool for beaver furs. As the myth goes, the Dutch even purchased Manhattan Island from the Lenape in 1626.
Wells Fargo has committed $1 billion through 2025 to develop housing.
Look at the
affordability
ancestors
solutions.
talking to. Yeah, Wells Fargo, nigga. I didn't make that up. Right? The transaction. The transaction enforced by the eventual building of a wall around New Amsterdam marked the very beginning of the Lenape's forced mass migration out of their homeland. The wall, which starts showing up on maps in the 1660s, was built to keep out the Native Americans and the British. It eventually became Wall Street, and Manhattan became Manhattan, where part of the Lenape trade route, known as, somebody in the crowd pronounced this, Wick Quoxgek, became Breadweg, later Broadway. So Broadway is a trading route, right? Broadway, on Broadway, where they have plays and theater, and on Broadway, which is a vein that goes all throughout Manhattan. The reason why trade and businesses that boom are on Broadway is because of the quote unquote spiritual implications of it already being a trade route. So people are just doing trade. Nowadays, you just do trade. You tap into the original energy that already exists in these trade routes. You should research in all of the places in the cities and the states that y'all been roll calling that you live in. Why don't you research what is the trade route the Indian trade route, the ancient trade route. 90% of the people who called out roll call, you all live on ancient indigenous Indian lands, such as Manhattan, where we reside right. I'm in the Bronx, but yeah, this is the land right now. This is Lenape land that I'm on right now. So tap into the trade routes. You know what I mean? And study what you call it, morphogenetics, geomantics, and geomancy, and you'll be able to tap into the current, the ley lines, the energy grid. You know what I mean? The movement of the energy, because that's what they're doing. All right. The Lenape helped shape the geography of modern day New York City, but other traces of their legacy have all but vanished. In one of the most diverse cities in the United States, there are tellingly few native New Yorkers. Some Lenape today, however, are working to bring their heritage back to the city. Shout out to Turtle Gang. He's Lenape. We love New York. We have a history there before the white man ever showed up. But the Lenape are forgotten because they haven't had a presence here in decades, centuries, says Curtis Zuniga, co-director of the Manhattan-based Lenape Center. Da 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 da. Like many Lenape, he uses the term Delaware, the federally recognized name for the Lenape, interchangeably with the group's own name for itself. None of the three co-directors of the Lenape Center live in New York City, but they decided to base their organization there because of the ties to its ancestry. Look, the area the Lenape occupied before the Europeans arrived was known to them as Lenape Ho King. And listen to this, it covered roughly the area between New York City and Philadelphia, including all of New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, and part of Delaware. Do you know how large, talk black to me, do you know how large that land is that I just described? When we talk about the mounds and the connectivity, do you see how people from Philly and New York are meshed together like that? How people from Jersey, we are still, we originally had a land where all of that shit was connected. Where's that movie at? Where's that story at? Where's that alternative reality where you could tap into some shit like that? That would be a dope ass story. Hold on. Let me finish reading this. Right? So for the indigenous people who live in New York City, who live in the Hamptons, who live in Long Island, who live in Kings County, who live in New Amsterdam and other places, and you have family all throughout the tri-states. You have family in Philly, Pennsylvania. You have family in Jersey and other places, Delaware going down there. Yeah, chances are y'all always been there. According to Zuniga, his people agreed to move out of Lapenoho King, giving up lands they were promised in treaties, and first migrated to Pennsylvania. From there, they settled in Ohio, then Indiana, then St. Louis, then elsewhere in Missouri, before purchasing a reservation in Kansas in 1830 using funds from previous treaties. So, black people, African American people, ADOS, my niggas, right? FBA, who reside in places like Ohio, Indiana, St. Louis, Missouri or Missouri. These are all places, these are all Masonic outposts, heavy Masonic activity, heavy KKK, Masonic, Ku Klux, Octopus activity in those places, right? Heavily indigenous places, right? heavily indigenous populated places. But there's a spell, there's some kind of, it's either a drug scourge, right? A lot of redlining, a lot of interruption in those areas. But those areas are Lenape settlements. So when you want to do the research about where the family is from, even if you do your ancestrydna.com or whatever you choose to do to find out your family tree and whatnot, you should begin to look into whether your ancestors were migrated out of the New York City region and into places such as Ohio, Indiana, St. Louis, and Missouri, and Kansas. Remember, reverse migration. And then the Ben Ishmael tribe that Taj Tariq taught us about, how they moved throughout the Midwest and whatnot. You see it right here. You know what I'm talking? Hold on. They had them niggas move. Hold on, they got them moving around more. So these are the people who got pushed out of the New York City, Seneca Village, and all of these places after the Civil War, right? The Civil War. The U.S. government forced the Lenape to Kansas to sell their land so railroad companies could build tracks on it, right? They then purchased a reservation from the Cherokee in Oklahoma, where they reside today, in Bartlesville and Anadarko. Their kinfolk also reside in Ontario, Canada. The Delaware Nation at Moravian Town in the Muncie, Delaware Nation. Smaller bands of Lenape still live in New England in the mid-Atlantic, but most are self-recognized. One exception being the Ramapo Lenape Nation, recognized by the state of New Jersey, but not the U.S. government. What's fucking with that? So yes, Old Dirty Bastard was correct in what he was talking about. He wasn't shooting from the hip. He wasn't crazy when he said that his family sold Manhattan and that he was Lenape and Chief Tammany, right? So the reason why all of this is important, people like, so what does this mean? Like, all right, cool, whatever. All right. Keep in mind, we're talking, this is Thanksgiving. So we got to paint a picture and put a face to these quote unquote Indians that people don't really give a fuck about, allegedly, just for the way shit looks like, because there's no outrage, and explain or show their contributions to this land, to society that we exist in right now, and what happened to them. Not just at one dinner, my nigga, and not just in Columbus's day, for damn near 400 years. For damn near 400 years. So who is this Chief Tammany that ODB talks about? Well, the Tamaned or Tammany or Tamaned was a chief of one of the clans that made up the Lenni Lenape Nation in the Delaware Valley at the time Philadelphia was established. Tamaned is best known as a lover of peace and friendship who played a prominent role in developing amicable relationships amongst the Lenape and the English settlers who settled Pennsylvania, led by William Penn. Also referred to as Tammany, he became a popular figure in 18th century America, especially in Philadelphia, also called a patron saint of America. Tamanend represented peace and amity. A Tammany Society founded in Philadelphia holds an annual Tammany Festival. Tammany Societies were established across the United States after the American Revolutionary War and Tammany assumed mythic status as an icon for the peaceful politics of negotiation, right? Okay? So this man was extremely powerful, okay? Extremely powerful, right? So the basis, I'm gonna follow up in a minute, but the basis of what we know today as American politics, keep in mind, this is Thanksgiving. So who are we giving thanks for? I'm giving thanks to Chief Tammany. I'm giving thanks to the Lenni Lenape Nation. I'm giving thanks to the contributions that these people have played, you know, just in history. Okay? So the foundation of the politics is built off of these tribes. Tammany Hall, the Longhouses, the Articles of Confederation, many other things that is the foundation of this great society that we all live in. You could front if you want, my nigga. Go to Bolivia. You know what I'm talking about? I got a ticket that you niggas could go to Zimbabwe right now. You know what I'm talking about? Exit left, leave the table, drop the forks, facts, and go somewhere. If it ain't what it is. If this ain't it. So, once again, you're dealing with these people who are remember, these people are chameleons. These people assume identities of people who are greater than them. These people are parasites. So these people will come amongst wise men like they did when they sat at the feet of the elders in Kemet. Right? When they sat in the universities in Seville, in Cordoba, right? In ancient Spain, in Al-Andalus. What did they do? They came amongst our people and they learned from them. And when they learned from them, they turned on them. They'll come and soak up the energy and the information and the light. And they'll suck up the talent in the room. And they'll drink from straws of your tears. And they'll exploit you. And that's what they've been doing. They did that to these Indians. They exploited them. And then what did they do? They formed something called Tammany Halls or Tammany Societies. And those Tammany Societies were basically how they carbon copied and how they swagger jacked and how they are plagiarizing and how they parasited and how they assumed the role as, keep in mind, $5 Indians and stuff like that, right? Chief Cuffy. Keep these things in mind. And this is also where corruption, when they began to form something called Tammany Hall. Okay? Tammany Hall is a political outpost in New York City where politics or the elevation of political societies were formed. Let me just get back into this information real quick. Thank you everybody for hitting this plate right here for this full plate of turkey wings. You know what I'm talking about? So the Tammanies. The Tammanies or Tammany Society were named for the Delaware chief of Tamarind or Tammany, revered for his wisdom. During the American Revolutionary War, admiring colonists dubbed him Saint Tammany, the patron saint of America. Tammanies are most well known today for New York City's Tammany Hall, also popularly known as the Great Wigwam. But that society was not limited to New York. Indeed, there were Tammany societies throughout the colonies and later the young country, reflecting a great popular interest in frontier and Indian life, customs, and language. The Smithsonian's highly respected Handbook of Indians north of Mexico has this to say about the Tammanies. It appears that the Philadelphia Society, which was probably the first bearing the name and is claimed as the original of the Red Man's Secret Order, was organized May 1st, 1772, under the title of Sons of King Tammany, with strong loyalist tendency. It is probable that the St. Tammany Society was a larger organization of revolutionary sympathizers opposed to the kingly idea. St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, preserves the memory. The practice of organizing American political and military societies on an Indian basis dates back to the French and Indian War and was especially in favor among the soldiers of the Revolutionary War, most of whom were frontiersmen more or less familiar with Indian life and custom. The society, occasionally at first known as the Columbian Order, took an Indian title and formulated for itself a ritual based upon supposedly Indian custom. So if you want to talk occult science, if you want to talk metaphysics, if you want to talk occultism, then let's talk, my niggas, because this is dark matter right here. This is how they take things, and this is how they ritualize them, and this is how they tap in to these powers. Okay, this is occultism. This is when you take the Indian life and you formulate itself upon a ritually based custom. That's what the Jew has done. The person that you call a Jew today, who is Yiddish, right? The where's my Hebrew Israelites? They took a custom and they ritualized that and they made it their own. That's what they've done. They're a secret society. That they're not secret, but they're a cult. Thus, the name chosen was that of the traditional Delaware chief. The meeting place was called the Wigwam. There were 13 tribes or branches corresponding to the 13 original states. The New York parent organization being the Eagle Tribe, New Hampshire the Otter Tribe, Delaware the Tiger Tribe, whence the famous Tammany Tiger. The principal officer of each tribe was styled the sachem, and the head of the whole organization was designated the Kichi Ukima, or Grand Sachem, which office was held by Mooney himself for more than 20 years. Subordinate officers also were designated by other Indian titles. Records were kept according to the Indian system by moons and seasons, and at regular meetings, the members attended in semi-Indian costume. The defining purpose of the Tammany societies was to delight in all things Native American: titles, seasons, rituals, language, costumes, and so forth, as this was 1832 notice of a meeting of Wickham number 9 in Ohio illustrates. Notice: the members of the Tammany Society number 9 will meet at their wigwam at the house of Brother William Murray in Hamilton on Thursday, the 1st of the month of the heats, precisely at the sun going down, the sun. Punctual attendance is requested by order of the great sachem. The 9th of the month of flowers, year of discovery 323, William C. Ken, Secretary. Yeah, John Wick. Exactly. You get it. This notice is virtually a carbon copy of the kind of notices that appeared regularly through the young nation for decades. Only the details of time, place, and perhaps native rituals to be observed change. Although the New York Tammanies came to be part of the democratic political machine, politics was never a very important part of the New York Tammanies' agenda. Their notices were like the one above and virtually never mentioned political activity. A political rally or parade was little more than merely another opportunity to delight in what they perceived as Indian regalia, customs, and language. Okay? So when you see this, right? When Ralph Lipschitz, right? Ralph Lipschitz, aka Ralph Lauren, begins to design his polo brand, right? That epitomizes white Anglo-Saxon Protestant fashion or high-born blue blood fashion, right? He incorporates the Indian motif into his designs. But what most people don't realize with the Indian head and with the Indian motifs that he was signifying in his polo, in the polo Ralph Lauren brand, is Tammany. It is dealing with the white people and the fact that they were worshiping or they were cosplaying. They were dressing up and cosplaying. You understand? They were basically you know, that's the Indian head. For anybody that was in these streets in the 90s, my nigga, you already know how much of an importance that was in our culture. You know, that's a staple in our culture. You know what I'm talking about? These niggas was dying for these things right here. You know, this was a status symbol. You feel me? Like this was a status symbol in the hood when we were coming up. Many of us were attracted to the Indian iconography, obviously because of our indigenous heritage. You know what I'm talking about? Obviously because of, you know, it was just something that was inside of our blood that had us attracted to the iconography. But when you really begin to break it down as to who they're appealing to with that clothing brand, this is what they're really speaking of. You know, these Tammanies, these are places where these were places where these Europeans were tapping in and, like I said, cosplaying, you know, becoming something other than who they are, you know, assuming a role, right? Assuming the role of another group of people once again. They're not being themselves. Yeah, pretendians. You know what I'm talking about? They not coming together on some white shit. They not, you know, why they not coming together talking about the Pope in Rome. You dig? So let's talk about Tammany Hall, okay? Because Tammany Hall features significantly in what I'm building on, which is the corrupt underworld, dark side of America, which seems to be the lifeblood, which seems to be the quote unquote, you know, the activating principle. You know, I started this show off earlier speaking about the fact that I've been watching a lot of gangster movies, documentaries. You know, I went through the Vlad paradigm, and there's all kind of cold-blooded killers, you know. And keep in mind, when we were younger, these are urban legends. So even where I'm at right now mentally, where, you know, I've elevated my minds and whatnot, and I feel that I'm on a higher frequency, there's still in a lore that I'm drawn to, you know, to study as even as a Scorpio in the month of Scorpio, because a lot of this was taken place during the month of Scorpio, where, primarily, and it was a retrograde, where primarily, this is a very dark time. You know what I mean? This is a time when the leaves are dying. This is a time of, death and resurrection. The winter solstice is on its way. All right, that signifies hibernation season. That signifies things dying. That signifies death. You understand? The winter season is death season. Um, you know, uh, so during this time, the Jason months, the end in the Jason months is November. So this is the end of it, and they cap it off. The ritual is that they cap it off with a massacre. The ritual is that they cap it off with genocide. The ritual is that they cap it off with, an organized criminal faction who basically rack through levels of political corruption, war, treachery, treason, and all kind of shit. Basically took a very mineral, oil, diamond, gold, silver, water, air, a rich land, a rich land, a more land, a rich land, a land of riches, crops, tobacco, corn, rice, cotton, sugar. It's a land of milk and honey. They basically took this land of milk and honey throughout different centuries as the nation was forming, right? There was and milked the shit out of it. As these remember robber barons, the early entrepreneurs of American culture or American society or in American history, they also moonlighted as organized criminals. All right, they moonlighted as robber barons. They moonlighted as, these were criminal factions. The frontiersmen, the men who rode west, these were killers. These were people who were riding out and committing atrocities in the name of America. Manifest Destiny. The Italian immigrants, the first wave of immigrants who came in as buffer nations to separate the growing population of the free slaves, of the aboriginal indigenous people who inhabited the lands, who were not even enslaved or did not even succumb to slavery. These people were just out here doing their thing. You understand? Inventing things. All of the inventors of the 1800s, the Reconstruction period, the period where our people who just got out of forced labor and whatnot, they begin to build on their own. They begin to purchase land. They begin to build towns and whatnot. Those towns were thriving. Those economies were thriving. Education was thriving. Inventions and discoveries. You know what I mean? So that means that the human mind, or the quote unquote, the brain waves of our people were activating at a high frequency. So either they were in times of peace or they were in times of abject war, because in times of war you find a lot of creativity taking place, because you're in survival mode. So in survival mode, you're going to learn how to enhance your weaponry. You know what I mean? So you'll go from shooting out of the roof of a car into developing a tank. You know what I'm talking about? You'll go from a passenger plane to a bomber plane. You know, warfare is advanced when in war, during wars. Technology is advanced as a result of war. The friction and the force. Remember, we're talking active principles. I'm only giving you some of the elements of life, and force being one of them. So it trickles down to what you see as the shit that people are out here doing when they out here putting in work, and when they're smoking fire. You know what I'm talking about? When shit is burning, when the hop principle to hip hop. Remember we talked about hip hop. Hip is your intellect. You hip. You aware of some things. You're witty, right? You come up with shit off the top. You could freestyle. You're a lyricist. You could put together, similes and double entendres. But the hop aspect to hip is the active principle. It's the shit that gets niggas hopping off the porch. You know what I mean? So you hip and then you hop. There has to be a formula. It has to be a variable. X times Y equals Z. It's not just happening by itself. There has to be some kind of dichotomy. So in my, niggified red pill analogy, my simple formula is Malcolm times Bumpy equals Elijah, or equals the Black God. Malcolm times Bumpy equals the Black God. Or with Elijah and Clarence X, Father Allah, who they were referring to the Black God. But the movie or the TV show, I'm gonna get into Tammany Hall in a minute, but the TV show, right? The TV show, Godfather of Harlem. There's an interesting dichotomy taking place. There's an interesting formula that they're revealing. I appreciate the story, that's why writing is important. Don't ever succumb, and don't ever be so dumbed down, and don't ever fall so low to where you don't demand, a writer, a screenwriter, or movies to, be heavy on the writing. You understand? You have to demand that the Scorseses of the world, that that kind of writer or that kind of director does not die out. And it's all about the fucking the lights, cameras, and actions and whatnot. Just actions and shit blowing up. You don't want that. You want some intricate stuff like Godfather 1, 2, and 3. You dig? So they're showing you a relationship between Malcolm X and Bumpy Johnson, the intellect and the criminal, right? The hip and the hop, because Bumpy is the hop. Bumpy gets shit popping. He's gonna go and do what needs to be done to get things done. He's a no limit soldier. There's no limit with him. He understands an active principle in the underworld is force. So he's not gonna talk a lot. He's gonna do. He's gonna hop, right? He's gonna light fire to things. He's going to activate. He's an active principle. He's the dark matter. He's an unseen force. You don't see a lot of the bodies when they drop. You don't see murders in broad daylight. You don't see a lot of things in the underworld. It's hidden. It's the underworld. It's the dark matter. It's the black matter. It's the hidden. It's a cult. You understand? But you feel it though. You know it is there. You know that it's there. You could go places and you could feel that dark presence. You could feel the darkness. You could feel the black matter. You know what I'm talking about? You know that it's dark in these streets. But you don't see the hand of death. You don't see the Grim Reaper. But you hear about that nigga coming to collect his taxes. So Bumpy is the hop. Bumpy get things done in garages and warehouses and in dark basements. Things get done. Deals get brokered in dark casinos and dark clubs, speakeasies, underworld, gambling spots, in the dark crevices, in the triple darkness, things are birthed. Remember, Axe a Farmer, under the UV lights of the moon is when all things grow. So niggas that get busy in these streets under the moon, under the moonlight, at night, the underworld that wakes up when the sun goes down, right? That is a functionality of society everywhere that you look. Yeah, we're going to talk about the CEO of Twitter going to the dark continent. Nigga, this is all black matter matters. We're going to talk about all black matters or all dark matters. This is Black Thursday. You know, get ready for Black Friday. You know what I'm talking about? So, yeah, and we're also going to talk about the discovery of the fifth force of nature, right? As they study dark matter, as they study the principle of matter that is the creative principle that they claim to not have any understanding about. But you know, our ancestors, that's all they talk about, and that's what they taught us about. And that's what we tap into. So these underworld figures in this Bumpy Johnson, and then there's a four-way there's a character arc that the Bumpy Johnson Godfather of Harlem TV series has introduced to the world in the series, and that's Adam Clayton Powell, right? Who is a light worker, who is on the dark, who plays on the dark side, right? He's not, he's a preacher and a politician, but he walks on that very middle path between light and dark. He's in the middle path. He follows the middle path. He doesn't follow the left path or the right path. That nigga's in the middle. Then you have Malcolm X, who we are assuming would be on the light side, right? Who we will be assuming will work for the light, even though he used to walk on the dark side. That's where he met Bumpy Johnson, who is on the dark side in the underworld. He is the hidden one. He is the Asar. He would be the Asar. You know what I mean? He said that Malcolm is like his son. That's my son. That's my young protege. I chased him out of Harlem because this wasn't, the street life wasn't for him. And Malcolm X credits him for pushing him out of the streets, because that started his road to becoming Malcolm X from Detroit Red, because they knew each other when he was Detroit Red. He was in the streets, for real, for real. But he got ran out of New York by Bumpy Johnson. And then the other figure who they are introducing you to is Vincent the Chin Gigante. Remember the mobster who used to walk around in his bathrobe and he used to act like he was wild crazy back in the days? That was Vincent the Chin, right? He's an Italian mobster. He's the head of the Genovese crime family, right? And you know, he's going to war with Bumpy Johnson over the Harlem market, the underworld market of Harlem, the very lucrative, right? Very, very wealthy, very lucrative underworld of a poor neighborhood. How is that possible? How could a ghetto, how could the hood, how could you know, impoverished place like that be such a cash cow for not only the mafia, but for black gangsters, and everybody's getting rich? Exactly. Go and watch the Cotton Club. Go and watch Hoodlums. These are all reference points to what I'm talking about. And Harlem Nights. All right. Harlem Nights, Hoodlum, Cotton Club, where they explore and expand on the Dutch Schultz, the Dutch man, and his the fact that he was basically shaking down black people in Harlem, like Queenie and Bumpy and whatnot. Hoodlum really explores that, where Morpheus is playing, I believe he's playing Bumpy, you know. But never before did we see this relationship that was forged between Malcolm and Bumpy. They got them together damn near every episode. So it's just showing you that there's a dichotomy of our people where those two worlds were not separate. The streets and the underground of consciousness, or the underpinnings of our subconsciousness or our conscious movements. But these movements are grassroots movements. and for grassroots movements to basically take place or to grow, these movements have their ears to the streets. They're in the trenches. Now keep in mind the Nation of Islam, by way of Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad and whatnot, they were also known for cleaning up the neighborhood. So they were not in bed with the gangsters. Malcolm X is not in bed with Bumpy Johnson. He's not condoning and he's not assisting him in his criminal activities. But these are two men of influence and power and whatnot who, I would assume have a level of love for their people. And there are outside forces that are threatening uh, the people. So what happens when things like that happen? When things like that happen, you're forced to come together and you're forced to consolidate and you're forced to sometimes, you know, even compromise, right? For the betterment of the whole. So in Malcolm's mind, to keep the Italians away from Harlem and away from our people, feeding and feasting off of our people, leeching off of our people, he says, you know what? I'm going to go with the lesser of two evils and get behind somebody that I know, and get these people out of our neighborhoods because they mean us no good. They mean us no good whatsoever. You know, by then the Irish have become the police. By then the Irish have become the union heads or working in the unions, like the dude in the Irishman, Sheenan. You know, these people are running, you know, places of power. Because how did they do that? They did that through this place right here, Tammany Hall. All right, Tammany Hall, also known as Society of Saint Tammany, the Sons of Tammany, or the Columbian Order, was a New York political organization founded in 1786 and incorporated on May 12, 1789 as the Tammany Society. It was a Democratic Party political machine that played a major role in controlling New York City and New York State politics and helping immigrants, most notably the Irish, rise in American politics from the 1790s and the 1960s up into the 1960s. It typically controlled Democratic Party nominations and political patronage in Manhattan after the removal victory of Fernando Wood in 1854 and used its patronage resources to build a loyal, well rewarded core of district and precinct leaders after 1950. The great majority were Irish Catholics, right?
Rising
The Tammany Society emerged as the center for Democratic Republican Party politics in the city in the early 19th century. In 1854, the society expanded its political control even further by earning the loyalty of the city's rapidly expanding immigrant community, which functioned as its base of political capital. The business community appreciated its readiness at moderate cost to cut through red tape and legislative mazes to facilitate rapid economic growth. The Tammany Hall ward boss or ward healer, wards were the city's smallest political units from 1786 to 1938, served as the local vote gatherer and provider of patronage. By 1872, Tammany had an Irish Catholic boss, and in 1928, a Tammany hero, New York Governor Al Smith, won the Democratic presidential nomination. However, Tammany Hall also served as an engine for graft and political corruption, perhaps most influentially under Scottish Quaker William M. Boss Tweed in the mid 19th century. By the 1880s, Tammany was building local clubs that appealed to social activists from the ethnic middle class. In quiet times, the machine has the advantage of a core of solid supporters and usually exercise control of politics and policy making in Manhattan. It also played a major role in state legislature in Albany. So there you see the political apparatus. Yeah, that's Gangs of New York right there that I just read. Go and watch Gangs of New York. You'll have a better understanding of Gangs of New York and what that movie was telling you. Scorsese once again giving it up. You know, he gives it up, and you'll have a greater understanding about Tammany Hall and how political power was basically bought and sold by these European immigrants who came in and were basically ushered and used crime and corruption, the gun and the dollar, to push themselves past our people, you know, to put themselves in a slot that we should have been in. Niggas is pouring concrete in 2019. Niggas ain't even pouring concrete in the construction unions. They just got them holding hammers and nails. You know what I mean? Like look at where black people are in 2019, and then look at where the Irish and the Italian and the Jew is. What did they do to get there? Were they more ruthless than us? Were they willing to put in more work? Were they hopping faster? Was they gun going off? Were they more gangster? Were they more organized? Were they more connected? Were they more unified? Were they more hungrier? They took the ports. They took the unions. They took everything. They took Hollywood. They took the police force. They took the fucking the fire department. And then when the Jamaicans and the Haitians come in and other people come in like the 60s and whatnot, what do they use? What do? They use them to undercut many of the people who were already here, who are working for a certain amount of money per hour. And then after doing that, they bring the Mexicans in, and they bring the Ecuadorians in, and they bring the Lithuanians in, and the Albanians in, and they have those people undercut the other people. And then during the same time, our population is becoming addicted to controlled substances that they cannot control, and they're getting locked up because the war on drugs and the war on poverty is basically something that has been put together through the mafia by way of the government, because Lucky Luciano, who was flooding America with heroin through the French Connection, was basically working with the American government, because they the ones who took that nigga out of jail and pardoned him and let him go set up a criminal enterprise in Italy, which he connected to all of the mafia families in America, and they started this pipeline. So these are Italians. More, not just Italians, these are Sicilians. Italians with nigga gripes. Because they not over there celebrating the Moors. Let's be clear. You know what I'm talking about? These niggas is not running around waving Moorish flags talking about Drew Ali. These the Guineas. They despise, they killed their fathers. Their fathers been dead. That's why they love their mama so much, because they killed for their mama. They turned on the Moriscos or the Moors or their fathers. Their fathers had African blood. And then they took a vow to basically, this thing of ours, La Cosa Nostra, and these are Roman Catholics who got christened under the Roman Catholic Church. So these are soldiers of Rome. These would be the underworld arm of a Jesuit army, but these are Roman Catholic soldiers. Remember, they put in work. They twerking for the Pope, nigga. They twerking for the Pope. So they have an anti-nigger gripe. They got an anti. They coming over here already hating melanated men, and they don't want to go through round two of their women getting piped down, right, by black men. Henceforth, the Bronx tale, right, the Bronx tale, where they they wasn't about all of that race mixing. So they come into America. There's a situation where 19 Italians get lynched in Louisiana because they send them to Louisiana to work on the railroad tracks and some other things. And the Italians, the Sicilians, the Southern Italians, they're not considered to be white. They look down upon. They have them all up in Louisiana, and they basically hanged 19 of them. There was a lynching of 19 Italians. This lynching almost pushed Italy and America into war. The Americans, the white Americans, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, had to begin to incorporate the Italians into their society. So they introduced something called Columbus Day. Columbus Day eventually becomes a holiday, right? And the Italian Americans get behind Christopher Columbus as a mythological figure, right? In their quest to become Americans or to be accepted in America, they utilize their Christopher Columbus as a patron saint. Okay, there was no holiday called Christopher Columbus Day. They was not fucking with no Christopher Columbus until these situations in the early 1900s and whatnot. And then the Italians get into politics, and they get a little bit into positions of power. And then you have the roaring 20s and then prohibition, which introduces the gangster era and then organized crime and some shit like that. And the rest is history. The rest is history. And they've been giving niggas hell ever since. You know what I'm talking about? They started out as allies. They were allied with our people. That's why they were being hung and they were being outcasted, because they were living amongst us the same way that the Jew was living and the Irish was living amongst ours. And even though we clashed, there was a level of camaraderie, there was a level of connectivity, there was a level of familiarism, and there was a level of homage being paid to the big homies them. You know what I'm talking about? There was some rings getting kissed, my nigga. They was paying some homage. But those things change. Yes, happy birthday to Bobby Hemmett, the metaphysical saint, the occult, the Darth of this whole thing. You know. So in order for these different racial groups to show their quote unquote allegiance, to pledge their allegiance, they had to become part of the anti-nigger machine. And that's something that they did willingly. The Irish became the policemen, you know what I mean? The Irish became the muscle. The Italians became the labor force. And they became the buffers. And the Jew became the banker. He became the source of entertainment. He became the financier. He became the ledger, right? And all of them became absorbed into white society, and they became earners and foot soldiers for the white mafia, for the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant mafia. Fuck the Italian mafia and all of them. Those pale in comparison to the U.S.A mafia. The Wasp is the big zaddy, the blue blood nigga. That's the big daddy. That's zaddy right there. So they kissed that. They became made men and they became hitters. And because you're not more gangster than the CIA, the FBI, Hoover, and them niggas. You know, these are the real gangsters. These are the ones who sat in Tammany Hall and put this whole thing together. Remember, it was corrupt from the beginning. So for the Irish police who who walked up the ladder to become the judges and become the police chiefs, they come from the same neighborhood gang that the gangsters came from. They come the Italian judges and the Giulianis of the world. Look at what he's doing now with Trump. They come from the same. They're cut from the same cloth as the gangster. Whitey Bulge in Boston. His brother was the state senator. He was the top gangster. And they went to bed with the CIA during World War II when Lucky Luciano was in bed with the government and he was the head of the commission. He was the top dog. So by him getting in bed with the government and helping them defeat Mussolini, they had access into American politics via the via the American underworld in ways that was unparalleled, to whereas J. Edgar Hoover was turning his cheek. He was acting like they didn't even exist, right? Yes, go and watch The Departed. The Departed is the Whitey Bulger story. Black Mass. Black Matter Matters. You know, these gangsters help build these cities. These organized crime organizations, they help build these cities. They created all kind of stuff. They created the Vegases. They helped create Hollywood. They helped get Kennedy in the office. There was a lot of things that have been done through these factions, and there is, quote unquote, you cannot. There's no thin line. Like there's no deciphering line. You know. They put on for their people. They put on for they destroyed their people, right? They feasted or terrorized their own people and justified it with the means. And niggas is not doing that. Negroes is not doing that. Nowhere that I've been to, there's no organized crime. Nobody's organized. Nobody is doing anything for their community like that. Nobody is buying back the block. There's no Wakanda, my niggas. There's something called asset forfeiture. You know what I mean? And that shit is played out. It's 2020, nigga. You're not gonna do organized crime like they did in the roaring 20s. It's too late, nigga. It's too late. Chasing that shit, it's not even happening. I don't know what to tell these niggas with dark mat with doth at adoration. It's not even worth it. All of these stories are sad. As you watch The Irishman, every character that they introduce, they tell you how they were killed. Shots to the head, shots to the neck, shots to the face. Not to say that if you live that life and you signed that, you made that decision, that's what you're gonna live through. That's what you're gonna have to. That's what you're gonna have to stand on. But some people would fare better just being, just living life obedient, man. Just be a square. Just follow the motherfucking rules. You know what I'm saying? And be a robot. Because at the end of the day, you know, for some people, not everyone, some people don't want to be here forever, but for some people, it's who lasts the longest in order to tell the story about everybody and snitch on them when they're dead. Because that's what the niggas who last the longest always wind up doing. They always tell the story about people who died with the story, with the secrets. You know what I mean? They the ones who just, yeah, I wanna, on my deathbed, I'm gonna write a novel about all of the dirt that we all did. Um, if you don't realize that the missing piece, the missing ingredient in this cake that we all, this birthday cake that keeps eluding us, is organization. That's where the power and all that we could be in love and romanticize this dark underworld all we want, but we know that it was discipline, right? The smart ones that got away, the ones who, you know, we are like, yo, that person was great in the underworld and whatever, you know, whatever path that he walked down,